Okay, I hate to do this. If you can go back, I'm a giant fan of The Last of Us. Big fan, really big fan of part 1, really big fan of part 2. I think both of them are masterpieces. I have been a massive defender, someone who's a huge fan of this franchise. Probably my favorite franchise of all time. It's my favorite story of all time, both part 1 and part 2 together, and so far you can go back. I've been really enjoying the show. I love season 1. There's some things I would change. I think it felt a little rushed. It could have used a few more episodes to have it be a little less flavor of the week feeling, and have you also spend a bit more time with Joel and Ellie. But overall, I really loved it. And season 2 so far, I've been really enjoying. I've thought they've done really well. A lot of the changes have worked for me. I've been really impressed and have really loved the show so far. And I've seen in the comments the people who don't. I've seen many people who love the story for part 2, not vibing with this season, not vibing with the changes. And to be honest, I didn't understand it because I thought a lot of them were working for me. Well, it's officially hit me. They're not working anymore. Episode 5 and 6 are disappointing. That they're not. Yeah, we could dive into it a little bit. I was hoping for more. I am genuinely surprised at how disappointed I am. Especially after episode 5, there was parts that felt weird, but I felt still like, hey, overall enjoyed this. But episode 6 actually just killed it for me. And it's gone back on episode 5. My first feelings in the episode were correct. So I'm going to review episode 5 and 6. Again, full spoilers, both for the game and for the show. So let's just dive into it and why I wasn't feeling this at all. So again, the first off for episode 5, something felt off. I just wasn't vibing with it. I didn't like the dialogue. Felt weird, and there's been moments in this season where dialogue has felt weird at times. I know the "you are handsome" or whatever Abby says to Joel thing felt off for some people. For me, it didn't feel that off. It did feel a little strange, but overall, most of the dialogue changes have felt good. But in this episode, it felt really strange. It felt almost like a CW show. And I know Craig Mason is an incredible writer, and Neil's working with him, and I think Neil writes some of the most human dialogue I've ever witnessed. It's why we love games like Uncharted 4, The Last of Us Part 2, is the dialogue is so good. And it was terrible, just to be honest, for this episode, that it threw me off. And eventually later in the episode I came around, but immediately I wasn't loving the vibe. One big thing that wasn't working for me was them searching for Abby's friends. That in the game you find photos when they go into that kind of like satellite station thing where all the bodies are hanging from the scars. They find one of Abby's friends who's dead, and she has photos of all of Abby's friends, and so that they know what the rest of them look like. I know that that's kind of unrealistic to find a dead friend with a bunch of self-portraits of their friends that you're hunting for. But I thought they could have done like a group photo or something, because again, you got to keep in mind, Ellie doesn't know what any of these people look like. She's heard from Dina, but she doesn't know what they look like. And so when she's going on the hunt for these people, like she can hear on the radio of where they are, who's what. But she doesn't actually know what they look like, which creates issues later on in the show that we will get to. But their essential search for Abby's friends just isn't working for me. It feels off. Like it feels like they're not actually really looking. It doesn't feel as precise as the game. It just felt weird. It felt like they're listening to the radios and studying the patterns, but they weren't figuring out where these friends were. It was very weird, and that kind of threw me off. And then as the episode went on, specifically the part where Dina confesses that she loves Ellie, it was so cringy. It felt so awkward, so clunky. And I know that maybe what they were going for was awkward and clunky, because teenagers or 19-year-olds confessing their love always feels kind of awkward, but it didn't feel like that. It just felt like bad writing. That's where the CW show came in, and I've really actually loved Dina and Ellie's dynamic in this show. I love their dialogue. I think the actress who plays Dina is incredible and steals every scene that she's in. But it felt super weird, super cringy, super awkward. The dialogue was not good. And again, I'm someone who's been enjoying the show, loved the game, and I was surprised how much I was being pulled out of the show, and I was like, this doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel like the other episodes. I'm like, I don't love this dialogue. I don't love these scenes. And the episode got saved by the stalkers. So when they eventually go out to go and search, to go through the hospital and go through the one area that none of the wolves are in, which I don't fully believe. I think the wolves would have cleared this room, in my opinion, but I guess they're at a war, so maybe they don't have time to, but it feels like they would have covered this ground, but whatever. They go into there and they find a whole room full of stalkers. Again, how did no one come upon these before? Because essentially, from my understanding of them, stalkers are like fresher kills, where they're not as fresh as the super fresh ones who just kind of run after you, but they're people shortly after it, where the fungus hasn't fully taken over into clicker mode, and they actually will stalk you. And so I don't know how Joel and Ellie have never come across any of this, which we'll get to later, that they do that with the spores. That actually doesn't make any sense when you think about it. And trying to make it more logical, they've made it make less sense. That Craig's changes actually didn't make sense, and it actually creates more logical plot holes than less. But we'll put that aside. The scene was really great. When they all show up and they're getting trapped and you're like, what's going to happen? There was a moment where I was like, I don't know how they get out of this. How did they get out of this? And I actually forgot in the game of like, oh yeah, at some point we need Jesse to show up. I think this scene is worse than them hunting wolves and going on that chase scene. But then Jesse shows up and saves the day, and that was a really cool moment. And that's when I was like, you know what? We're back. I'm back into this show. That first little bit of this episode was weird, but I'm back. And so they escape. They kill the stalkers, and everything seems legit. They run into the forest to run away from some wolves that have found them. And then they enter into this park, and the wolves go, let's just leave them alone. If they come out, we'll shoot them, but better not to go in there. And eventually we find out why, where our friends run into the Scars, and the Scars doing their ritual. And it was so creepy and so well done. And again, I was back in that. I was like, this is done so well. And the ritual of hanging them up, cutting the guts, all of that was super, super, super creepy. And then eventually someone figures out that they're there, shoots Dina in the leg. They're like, let's split up. I'll run this way. Jesse, you take Dina, you run that way. And that's what happens. And they part ways. And at some point, and again, I think this was bad filmmaking. I don't know if it was who directed this or the writing or what. At some point, Ellie does get away, does escape after a very good chase scene, and then kind of sees a door. And it didn't immediately hit me that this was the hospital. It didn't even immediately hit me that they were really heading towards the hospital. I don't know if I just missed something, but I was paying pretty close attention. I didn't fully realize that they were going after Nora. I don't know if that was just on me. I don't know if it was on the show. But then when Ellie goes in the door, I never felt what I should have felt, which in that game, which in that moment, it was like in the game when Jesse's like, hey, we need to turn around and go back. And Ellie goes, and go and help Tommy, because Tommy's in trouble. And then Ellie kind of goes, nope, I need to go kill Abby. I'm going after Joel. And you're like, whoa, dude, you're going to let Tommy potentially die because you're on this vengeance quest? You need to go help him first, and then we can go solve Joel. That's kind of what was happening here. That in listening to the behind the scenes stuff, I was like, oh, that's what was happening? I had no idea. I just thought that Ellie randomly got into the hospital where Nora was because it wasn't filmed very well from a film standpoint. And I'm not trying to be nitpicky. I'm like, as the viewer, that wasn't clear to me until after I watched your behind the scenes stuff that that's what you were doing. And I'm someone who's really into film and usually picks up on stuff like that, and did not pick up on it. And so that wasn't very good, because then it kind of threw me off of the Nora stuff, because I was like, so Ellie just randomly gets into this hospital where Nora is? Wow, what are the odds of that? How does she even know what Nora looks like? She's never seen Nora, but she sees Nora and goes, Nora. And that again, not having those photos throws all of that off, because how, without Dina how would Ellie know for sure that this was Nora? She heard a brief description of people from Dina's memory, which would be very flawed in the moment. I don't think she was taking into account every single person in the room, but whatever. And then the episode continues after I kind of got over that, continues to be good, where it was like, okay, it's almost like a complete replica of the scene that you get in the video game, and the chase, and they chase after each other, and eventually they fall down the elevator shaft together into an area full of spores, which we finally have the spores introduced into the season. Now, I would be excited. It would seem cool, except for logically, it doesn't make any dang sense that over, what are we at now, 20, 30 years, that nobody has encountered spores. Nobody's ever heard of this. That they locked up a couple of their own infected people who got infected by spores by some of the original. Like, that's never happened before. Where in the game, what happens is what happens here, where eventually when an infected person can't really go around and infect other people, they just kind of cling to a wall and then begin producing these spores. And that, in the game, made total logical sense. It was a part of the world. That's why everybody wore gas masks, all the different things. And here they introduce it, and I'm actually genuinely not sure why, and think they shouldn't have. I think it was maybe to pander to fans or something, but it creates all these logical loopholes of, like, seriously? So the stalkers is one thing, but then this, nobody's ever encountered this until now. Nobody's ever seen this. We've never heard of this. So, but whatever. I'll move on from that. I think it creates a lot of logical loopholes. It's like in The Walking Dead when all of a sudden zombies got smarter in the last season. You're like, this doesn't make any dang sense. Why would that happen? But whatever. The spores are happening. Okay, Nora's infected. We get a great scene. I really thought overall the episode was positive, but it was my least favorite episode of the season. We get the conversation between Nora and Ellie, and I really liked that Nora got to essentially explain, hey, don't you know what Joel did? He killed all these people. He did this. And Ellie goes, yes, and still beats her anyways and tortures her for information on Abby. And I really love that, because I remember in the game when I was in that moment, because we didn't know that Ellie knew yet, I was like, man, I really wanted in that moment for Nora to say, don't you know what he did? Like, we didn't just go after some random guy and kill him. Like, he killed all these people. He prevented a cure from being made, all this different stuff. And I really wanted someone to say that to her so that she maybe could understand it a bit more. And they do. And Ellie still does it anyway. Because, of course, we know, if you've played the game, she already knows all of that. That has nothing to do with it. That she's not killing these people just because she was a grouchy teenager and treated Joel badly. She's killing them because she pushed Joel off pretty much immediately after that, and wasted the last several years of her relationship with him, and the amount of guilt that she feels from that and the shame that she has. She needs to go and essentially get a pound of flesh to try to make herself feel better for the guilt that she has. And so you see that here, and I really, really liked it. But again, after this episode, I was like, okay, it saved itself. It was fine, but by far, probably my least favorite episode of the series. There was good moments that helped it recover, but for a while it seemed like it was just a bad episode. Now watching episode 6, I am like, you know what? It was a bad episode. Had some cool moments, but it was bad. But boy, oh boy, was I not ready for episode 6. And what they essentially did here, I get what they were trying to do. So they cram all the Joel stuff, all the flashbacks into this episode. What were they trying to do? They were trying to do Bill season 2. That's what they were going for. That the Bill episode was such a big hit with critics. To be honest, not with me, because I really liked the Bill arc of the game. It's one of my favorite parts of the game. I was insanely disappointed that they essentially didn't do one of my favorite parts of the game. We never saw Ellie and Bill interact ever, and it's one of my favorite interactions in character dynamics. But overall, and I can admit it, hey, story-wise, it was well done. It was well done. And so, kind of like how Daredevil always has a one-shot fight scene that's really long, I guess The Last of Us is trying to have a flashback episode over multiple years that show a dynamic between two different characters and in their relationship. And this time it's Joel and Ellie's, and to be honest, it just did not work. Did not work at all. It was so much worse than the game. It was genuinely so disappointing. It all comes down to writing. I don't know why they decided. I know why they decided to do this, but I don't know why in the writer room they didn't say, hey, maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe this is not the best way to tell this story. Because I thought there's two ways they should have done this. Either they had a really long first episode that was longer than this, where you go on that whole journey together. Because if you don't make it long, it will feel rushed, which this episode definitely felt so rushed. Or you start your season off. Okay, I guess there's three things, but this is kind of all in part one. Or you start your season off with a few episodes of this before you get to the Abby stuff. Okay, that's one option you could do. You could have this all be at the beginning, have it be for much longer. It would work. Or you do what I felt like they should have been doing this whole time, which is every intro before the credits is a flashback with Joel and Ellie, starting in the first episode with her in her room getting the guitar, the first scene from the game. Which another question lingering in my brain is: does Tommy know what Joel did? Because so far we've never seen that Tommy does, and it will be really disappointing if he actually doesn't. But that aside, you start with that, and each episode you can have a flashback that relates to the guilt and the regret that Ellie has in each episode. And you can do that, and I think that would be so effective because it would answer questions, but it would leave other questions, just like the game did. And here in the show, they decide to do option 3, which is do it in a way that just doesn't work. Do an hour-long episode, so it feels way too rushed. Have it all randomly crammed here after she tortures Nora, which feels really weird in the story for us to get all of this information. It just genuinely doesn't work. So the opening, though, was cool. So Joel and Tommy, Joel defending Tommy to his dad, and that Tommy was essentially trying to buy drugs, and Joel caught him, beat the guy up, and is going to defend Tommy to his dad and essentially take the blame for it and take the beating. Dad comes in, kind of is like, dude, I get angry sometimes, but I'm not going to beat you. I'm not my own dad. And then he has a great line where he says, I'm trying to do a little bit better than my father. I hope one day you can do a little bit better than me. And as someone who is a parent, that is huge. That's actually something that people feel all the time towards their kids, is you're just trying to do better than your parents did. And you look back at your parents, you're like, they're trying to do better than their parents did. I thought that was a really great line and a great image of what Joel is trying to do for Ellie, that he's trying to be a better parent. And then we flash forward. We get a great scene between Seth and Joel. I've really loved the Seth additions in this, making his character more well-rounded. I thought that was really cool and really worked. You get Joel hand-making Ellie's guitar, which I thought was cool, because then when she leaves it on the ground, it's just collecting dust and kind of rotting away. She's not taking care of it. That is so much more painful than before, because you're like, man, Joel made this guitar for you, and you just let it slip. That's so sad. And what's interesting is here I thought, oh, this is going to be my favorite episode of the season, and boy was I wrong. That I actually wrote that down in my notes. I wrote down, I already know this is going to be my favorite episode of the season, after Ellie said I'm really sorry when she burned herself, and I was like, yes, this is working, this is so good. And I didn't know. I didn't know how I was going to feel. And it was not that it was working. And so then we get the future days scene, and I was really glad that they gave that to us, although I think the scene is much worse than the one in the game. I just think the additions actually didn't work. It made it more clunky. It felt weird, felt awkward. Putting it in the middle of the season, it just felt off. And also the logical problems of, and I know they go, it doesn't matter, but The Last of Us, I've really been proud of how they think through all the logical issues in the game. And especially with this Pearl Jam song, it was actually played live, but it was never released in 2013, but it was started to be playing live at shows. And Neil talks about how Joel was at a Pearl Jam show where they played the song and he remembered it and learned it himself before it was ever released, and that was cool. And so we all thought that they were going to use a different song, which would be too bad, because it's a song that means a lot. But logically, you're like, they can't use that song because it's like 10 years before the song was even in existence. Turns out they didn't care. which part of me can appreciate. Another part of me goes, that's kind of dumb. It also brings into question, why the heck did they make this thing set in 2003 instead of 2013? I still can't tell you why that's the decision they made. It makes no ding-dong sense, and it makes things like this make no sense. Where it should have been the Nirvana song or something, but it being that, okay, I guess. It's set in 2003 when the apocalypse happened, and so the song never existed, but somehow it did, so that's great. And so again, that scene didn't work as well, but I thought it was fine. I was happy to see it. But the museum scene is where this episode really lost me, because this whole museum, dinosaur, space station thing was so freaking rushed. You're just thrust into it. It goes by really quickly. They skip one of the coolest moments in that scene, which is at the end when you find the firefly that has died, who spray painted the firefly symbol and was writing all these crazy notes and talking about essentially how they were bombing kids and all these different things and the moral qualms he had. And then Ellie's just kind of haunted by it at the end. That's such a cool scene, and they decide to skip that for Ellie to just kind of look at real fireflies in the distance, which apparently she's never seen until now. I don't know. Or I was like, okay, that's a choice. It's definitely a worse choice narratively than the game was, because I thought the game one actually was very much more impactful. And this whole scene just feels weird, feels off, feels insanely rushed, like so rushed. It's like the writers in this episode are just scared to let Joel and Ellie just have a conversation and build some chemistry on screen. It just didn't work. And the hard thing about this scene not working and the sequence not working is that this is like messing up the giraffe scene, where if you mess up this scene, or if you mess up Sarah's death scene, for example, it really affects the show. And here, you messing this moment up really affects the show. That I feel like you could have spent way more time in that museum. You should have spent way more time in that museum and just have Ellie and Joel bantering back and forth as they explore the museum, where it's like we don't always need to rush into the next narrative point. Let the characters breathe for a second. Holy moly, I don't understand how they screwed this up this bad. And I feel like Neil is trusting Craig way too much with this narrative and not giving himself enough credit, because while some of his changes worked in season 1, they are not working here. And you have made these plot beats not even arguably worse, just worse, generically. This is not as good. Or maybe people who haven't played the game will enjoy it, but those who have can look at this and easily tell that this is a inferior product to what we got in the game. And in the first season, Craig had this saying of like, there's no point changing what worked in the game. What worked in that first game, no point changing it. And it's obvious that he obviously thought much of part 2 didn't work because he's changing everything so much. But here, he's not leaving the things that did work. And it sucks. This is worse. And I was so disappointed, because this, again, is one of my favorite parts of the game. And they ruined it. But again, here we go. We get another flash forward, whatever. Joel catches Ellie with the tattoo artist, I can't remember her name of, who's kind of like her first kind of girlfriend in the room. He catches them, I assume, making out. They say they were doing nothing more, and Joel's kind of like, what the heck? And they're also smoking weed and all this different stuff. And she leaves, and Joel kind of finds out that Ellie's a lesbian, but he doesn't fully believe her because she's high. So he's like, you don't know what you're talking about. We'll talk to you later. And this scene, again, this scene sucks. Because it does the thing that this show has teetered on doing at times that people have accused it of, but it actually does it, where I'm like, no. Here, the critics who have said that this version of Ellie is just a brat sometimes is 100% right, because her response to Joel was terrible. And I think it's the way they're writing her in all of these scenes that doesn't work is in the game. Ellie is written in all of these flashback scenes like she knows deep down that Joel lied to her, but she's doing everything within her fiber of her being to try to believe Joel. And keeps haunting her in the back of her head that it's not true. He killed all these people. He stopped me from being the cure. He did all these things. He lied about it. But she does everything in her being to try to believe him. And here, it feels like she's already made up her mind that he has lied and is acting on that. And it just doesn't work as well narratively. It makes her come off as a grouchy, angry, bratty teenager, which is not the vibe you get from Ellie in the game at all. And when she tells Joel, you don't own anything, you don't own this house, it's all been given to you, like, I was like, I never felt this. There's moments where I didn't like what Ellie did, or I didn't like what Joel did in the Last of Us games, but I never felt like I didn't like them as a person. And when Ellie told Joel, you don't own any of this, none of this is yours, it's all just been given to you, I was like, I don't like you. And that's not good. That I should like Ellie but disagree with her decisions, and that is not how I felt in this scene. It did not work at all. And this addition of a scene was useless, where I felt like it, and then her moving to the garage out of anger, that's not it. But he worked with Neil, so I'm like, they do understand these characters, but I'm like, I feel like you don't understand this character, where Ellie immediately lived in a garage, because her and Joel weren't actually father-daughter. Like, in his brain, they are, but they're not fully father-daughter, and he's her protector, but she also is someone who's mildly independent and wants a little bit of her space. They're not, like, attached at the hip. And her living in the garage was immediately when they first moved to Jackson in the game, and makes much more narrative sense, where here she moves out of anger because Joel's essentially controlling parent, who she's kind of throwing a temper tantrum as a teenager because she was caught making out with a girl in her bedroom while smoking weed and getting a tattoo, which I would say, yeah, you're probably going to be in trouble. Any reasonable logical person and any reasonable logical teenager, which I was at one point, would be like, yeah, you know what? Yep, not my best day on planet Earth. Probably did all the bad things all at once, which Joel jokes about, but here she just leaves then because she's angry. Wow, this is going to be a long video. Sorry, it's a long rant. Then we move on to the first patrol, and this scene sucks. The reason why it sucks is because it replaces Ellie finding the Salt Lake City hospital, which is such a good scene in the game. It's one of the most impactful, emotional, dude, wrecked me scenes. Wrecked me when I played the game. Like, it made me so emotional when Joel catches her, and just, you just feel the weight of him getting caught in it. And here, they decide to replace it with this Eugene scene, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. They also got rid of the scene where they find the two boys who tried to escape, which I actually thought was what they were initially doing at the beginning of the episode, until it was obvious that it was Joel, and it was set all the way back then, because that scene was so impactful, and they just completely skipped it, I guess, unless it comes up later, which is too bad, because them finding those two kids dead because they were infected. Now he's like, dude, we could have saved them. None of this had to happen. If, like, the guilt that she feels for not being the cure, you didn't get any of that in this. All, like, dude, it's so much worse. It's so much worse. How did they... Yeah, okay. So here we go. Eugene scene. Essentially, they find Eugene. He's bit, as many of us predicted from the beginning of the show. Wasn't a big surprise what happened to Eugene. I know they tried to be like, ooh, what happened to Eugene in the pockets? They're like, oh, we'll find out. We're like, yeah, he got bit. He had to get shot. This isn't rocket scientist. I've seen The Walking Dead. So it wasn't that surprising. They find Eugene. Joel does what you need to do and what the protocol is of Jackson. Is like, hey, we need to shoot him. Ellie's like, no, we don't. Holds out his hand. Hey, we got time. Yeah. So... And Joel then goes, okay, fine, we have time. Why don't you go? This felt really out of character for Joel, because Joel would lie about the fireflies, but I'm like, he wouldn't do this with Ellie. He wouldn't have done this. This is different than him saving her from dying and lying about it. They could have tied him up and brought him back. There's no reason why they couldn't have. One of them is immune. He could have rode, bound up with Ellie, and she could have gotten bit. Nothing would have happened, and Joel could have killed him. Instead, Joel promises her, I'm not going to do it. Don't worry, I'm not going to kill him. Go get the horses, whatever. And then immediately leads him off to go and kill him. They have a long back and forth of, you're going to kill me and whatever. Joel kills him. Ellie shows up. And because he said he promised, that's the same thing he told Ellie when she made him promise at the end of season 1 and at the end of the first game. So she goes, wow, okay, I've watched him break his promise. They go back. Joel's counselor is there, sees her husband, is so sad. Joel lies about it. And to be honest, tells her what someone in that moment needs to hear, that Ellie is 100% in the wrong in this, where it's like, dude, yeah. It's again that moment where I'm like, dude, Ellie, you're a brat. Like, this woman's grieving. She does not need to hear. Like, you can know, dude, this guy freaking lied about all this and killed it and have it destroy your relationship. But you don't need to taint how this lady saw her husband and stuff. And yeah, I did not like that. It again made me feel like Ellie was a brat. I couldn't believe that she did it. It didn't make me side with her. I didn't feel bad for her. I felt like, dude, this is not what a grieving person needs to hear happened to the person they cared about. Wow, you're kind of a jerk. And so then, yeah, she slaps Joel, of course, and that's where that came from, where she's mad at Joel, but she also gets why he did it, because, again, he was infected. He had to get shot. You couldn't bring him to Jackson. That's the protocol. But whatever. So that's what happened. The one thing I did like about this scene was that Eugene told Joel that if you love someone, you can or Joel told Eugene if you love someone, you can always see their face, which I think will come back to haunt Ellie in her PTSD trauma on the farm, which she does see Joel's face. That's part of the problem, but it's the face of him being beaten. It's not who he was. That she's got that PTSD that she's trying to get rid of in her brain, and the guilt that she carries around because of it, because she did love him. So yeah, so that happened. It's a much worse way of Ellie finding out that Joel lied. It's way less impactful. It's very frustrating that that's how they decided to go. But alas, this episode is just disappointment. So should I have been shocked? Not really. Then we get the porch scene, which I'm surprised they give it to us this early. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't get this until like the end of the game. and it's rewarding to get it. Because up until then, we just think that there was no redemption in their relationship. And you just feel that weight. And you go, oh, there was a bit of levity. It hurts more because, you know, like they were about to start trying to mend things and then it got taken. But whatever, they let you know it here. It's worse. Again, it's worse. It wasn't better. It was definitely worse. There was one part that was better. I liked seeing Joel explain to Ellie why, because in the game I remember watching it being like, dude, just explain to her. They were gonna kill you. I couldn't let you die. I'm your parent. Like, any parent is not going to let their kid die to save anybody, let alone the world. There's no way that I would ever let my kid die to save a bunch of people that I like. A parent is not going to make that decision. It's instinctively not in them to make a decision like that. And so for him to explain that to Ellie and have her, yeah, I thought that was good. That was good. The scene wasn't as good as the game overall. I think a lot due to placement, but that part, that addition was good. I was happy to see it. It was one of the things I wished happened in the game that I was happy to see here. And I thought the dialogue between them was good. But yeah. But then when it was going well, but then when Ellie tells Joel, because you're selfish, that's why you did it, because you're selfish, towards the end, I was like, okay. The brat thing comes up again, where I'm like, in the game, Ellie doesn't say that. Where Ellie can understand why Joel did it, but completely disagrees with him and is so hurt by it. Where here, Ellie just like name calls Joel, and, like, it just didn't work. It makes Ellie come across as like a brat and not likable. That you have someone constantly assuming the worst of a character you care about and attacking them. And it's not going to make you feel positively towards that character. And I think The way they portrayed her in this episode was a huge mistake. Where at the beginning of the episode, I thought they were doing so well. That's when I thought this is going to be my favorite episode of the season, because they had that interaction that Ellie and Joel have in the games of like a father and a daughter, and how she like leaned on him, and like when she said I was sorry for burning herself with the pan to try to cover up her scar, and she just wanted to wear short sleeves again. Like, it was so genuine and it felt like such a deep relationship. It was the first time in a while that I felt like, oh yeah, this is Joel and Ellie, and then they ruined it with how Ellie responded. Not because she was feeling distant from Joel, but again, like I said, Ellie in the game knows what Joel did, but tries with all of her might to make herself believe that it's not true, until it comes to the point that there's no way that she can't believe that it's not true. And that's what's hard here, is Ellie breaks all this relationship without clear, defined proof that that actually was the case. She didn't go to Salt Lake. She didn't see the dead body. She didn't hear the recordings. She just hears Joel break a promise and then breaks off their relationship. Where I'm like, it's not the same. Ellie was almost in the show looking for proof to not believe Joel, where Ellie in the game was looking with all of her might for proof to believe Joel, and she just couldn't do it. Because the evidence was too much, and that's what ruined this episode. So yeah, that's how I feel. So those of you who are angry at this show, count me in your corner. I'm sorry. I hope things recover. I hope they do well. I don't know if they will. When you ruin moments like this, it's hard to recover, right? So it makes it difficult. It's like watching a Spider-Man movie, and if they fumble Uncle Ben's death, it really does affect a lot of it, but you can recover. And so I hope they do, because again, I personally have enjoyed the last 4 episodes, but here I do have to agree, I see what you guys are seeing and I'm sad. So that's me. Let me know what you thought in the comment section down below. So sorry this is 40 minutes. If you made it to the end, hey, you're the real MVP, and I appreciate you very, very, very much. But I really wanted to share my thoughts on this with you guys. So there you go. Like, comment, subscribe, all that junk. Let's have a conversation in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys in the next one.